Happy New Year, my name is Sam, and you're watching Mox Cube. Today we're going to go over the top 3 cards from every Magic release in 2019. So we're going to start way back at the beginning of the year with Ravenica Allegiance. So our number 3 card that gets most played in cubes is Judith, the Scourge Diva. This card was a very nice addition to aggressive red-black strategies as well as sacrifice decks, although not token sacrifice decks, because of its pinging abilities, especially because you can choose the target you're pinging. So this was added to my cube, and I have enjoyed it on multiple occasions since its addition. The number 2 pick from Ravenica Allegiance is Rhythm of the Wild. This enchantment is great with any aggressive red-green strategy. The choice of putting a +1/+1 counter on your creature or giving it haste just is very exciting, especially when you have a creature that already has haste and you don't have to make that choice. I've loved this card. I draft it as often as I can. Next card is Terra Mandor. This 1-drop has proved to be pretty useful later in the game, where you can pump it up to being a 5/5 creature with its ability with flying. And this is a nice addition of 1-drops to blue, which blue usually has a tough time, especially my cube, getting good low-costed creatures. So this is a nice one to put in that 1-drop slot. So we're going to move on to War of the Spark. So the number 3 spot for War of the Spark, we have Krenko, the Tin Street Kingpin. Krenko, putting out all these goblin tokens and getting larger every turn when it attacks is just great for token strategies, especially with Perforos. I love drafting Perforos. It's always a first pick for me if I see it in a pack. And yeah, Krenko is just a great token producer for those types of decks. So number 2 is Narset, Parter of Veils. Narset, obviously, hindering your opponents from drawing extra cards as a static ability is pretty powerful. Gets a lot of play in Legacy especially. But it is very useful in Cube, especially because it has the -2 ability where you can look at the top 4 cards of your library and filter through them for a non-creature, non-land, which in control decks it tends to be what you're looking for anyways. So the number 1 card in War of the Spark, this is actually a card I did not put in my cube. However, I have picked it up recently to try and squeeze it in at some point, is Saheeli, Sublime Artificer. For your red-blue spell decks where you're just going to be casting instants and sorceries all the time, this deck is great. It makes a 1/1 colorless servo artifact creature token every time you cast an instant or actually whenever you cast a non-creature spell. So yeah, it's pretty powerful, and it reminds me of like the prowess type abilities we saw. Like Monastery Mentor kind of thing. And being able to change your artifacts into copies of other artifacts, since you're making so many of these artifact servo tokens, can be very powerful, especially with the powerful artifacts you have in a cube. So this was the number 1 most drafted card, most added card from War of the Spark into cubes. So, Modern Horizons. Wow, that was an amazing set. I added so many cards for Modern Horizons into my cube. So, the top 3 cards that were added into cubes from Modern Horizons. Number 3, we have Deep Forest Hermit. And who doesn't love squirrels? So, yeah, Deep Forest Hermit was a great addition to Cube, making all those squirrel tokens, and especially if you do Recurring Nightmare and you can just keep recurring it and making more and more tokens. Gets a little ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun. Number 2, this one's actually kind of surprising. I didn't expect this one to fall in the number 2 spot. It is in my cube, but nonetheless, it surprised me. Soul Herder. So blinking things is always fun. I have had Venser, the Sojourner, in my deck for as long as I've had my cube, for as long as I've had my cube. And yeah, so anything with a enter the battlefield effect that you can just blink turn after turn while growing Soul Herder is just added bonus to the card that you're already playing. So yeah, I was surprised it was in the top 3, but at the same time, I can see why, because it is a very fun and powerful effect. So the number 1 spot I was not surprised about for Modern Horizons, and that is Prismatic Vista. This is a card that I didn't expect, but was pleasantly surprised in Modern Horizons. And this just goes in every format, honestly. I mean, you can play this in Legacy, you can play it in Commander, you can play it in Modern, obviously, and Cube is no exception. When you're looking to fix your mana base, this is a very powerful way to do that, because it's a strict upgrade from your Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds, since it doesn't come into play tapped, and the paying the 1 life is pretty negligible. I can't say that word. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Paying 1 life is worth it. So next we have Core Set 2020. Now, after the wondrous set that was Modern Horizons, Core Set 2020 was a little boring when it comes to cubes. So the number 3 spot, Spectral Sailor. This card is another nice 1-drop addition for blue and cube, where it has flash, it's a 1/1 flying, and then it has a static activation where you can draw a card for 4 mana as many times as you want. You don't have to tap it to do that ability. And in a control deck, especially where you're holding your mana open to play counters, if your opponent doesn't play anything you want them to counter, you can just at the end of their turn tap 4 mana, draw a card. So I thought this was a pretty solid addition to blue and cubes. And this was the 1 card in the top 3 that I actually added to my cube from Core Set 2020. The other 2 cards I have not added in, although I have considered adding the number 2 card, which is Rotting Regisaur. It is a massive 7/6 zombie dinosaur for 3 mana. And it has a drawback of discarding a card on your upkeep. However, I mean, if you can pump out those attacks turn after turn and use your removal to get it through, I mean, I guess this can be pretty solid even with its drawback. And even with its drawback has uses, you can use it for reanimation strategies. So it's not always a complete drawback. But currently this is not in my cube, but I did pick up a copy. I'm probably gonna give it a whirl and see how I like it. The number 1 spot for Core Set 2020 really surprised me, because I don't think about pauper cubes when I build cube, because mine's a powered cube. But I'm guessing this is why this took the number 1 spot. I'm guessing it's because it's in every pauper cube out there. But Cloudkin Seer is a 3-drop that's a 2/1 flyer, but when it enters the battlefield, it draws a card. And it is a common, so my assumption is that the reason this is seeing so much play in cubes is because of pauper cubes. So moving on, a set that often gets overlooked for cube cards tends to be the commander decks every year. I always scour through the new cards to see what might work in a cube, and there was 1 card this year that I found worth playing. However, it falls in the number 3 spot, to my surprise. So Angies Ravager is a 3/3 for 3. Tax each combat if able, and whenever it attacks, you can discard your hand and draw 3 cards, and then it has a madness cost of 1 in red. And with all the red looting effects in that I have in my cube, almost all the time I'm putting this in off of a discard for 2 mana. And I've never been disappointed to play this card. It's just a lot of fun, very powerful, refueling your hand every turn, especially if you're in a very aggressive burn deck or any other type of aggro deck. It's pretty powerful, and I don't think enough people have recognized it yet as such a great card, but I would highly recommend trying this one out in your cube. The number 2 spot I was a little confused about. I'm guessing maybe in Commander cubes. I think that's a thing. But Jarrod, the Conclave Exile. It's a Naya card, costs 2 red, green, white for a 2/5. When it enters the battlefield, you get a 4/4 Rhino with token with trample. And whenever it attacks, you populate, and then the token enters tapped and attacking. So, I mean, I can see how it has a lot of power to it, especially with the 4/4 trample that it comes with and being able to populate that. But I was kind of surprised that it was the number 2 card for cubes out of the Commander series. However, like I said before, a lot of people overlook Commander, and not a lot of people add a lot of Commander cards to their cubes. So anyways, that was the number 2. Number 1, I can understand a bit more, and it's actually one I'm looking to squeeze in and try in my own cube. Chainer Nightmare Adept. It's a 3/2 for 2 black and red, and when you discard it, you can discard a card, and you may cast a creature card from your graveyard this turn. You can activate the ability only once each turn. And whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, if you didn't cast it from your hand, it gains haste. So at worst, you can discard a card from your hand, cast it from the graveyard, and it automatically gets haste. At best, you can discard a useless card and get back an awesome creature out of the graveyard. So I'm thinking about squeezing this into my cube. However, Rakdos is a pretty tight guild in my cube, so we'll see if I can make that happen. But that was the number 1 card from Commander 2019 that got put into cubes. Next, we're on to the final set of the year, Throne of Eldraine. And I have an honorable mention here, Charming Prince. I thought was a really great creature at having 3 different abilities when it enters the battlefield that you can choose from. Versatility is always good, especially at a 2-drop for 2/2 for 2. I think having all these options to scry or gain life or to blink something else is just excellent. And I thought it was worth mentioning because I really like this card, and I think it's great in cube. But the number 3 spot goes to Oko, the Broko, the Thief of Crowns. So obviously we all know by now that Oko is extremely, extremely powerful. And in cube it is no different. I mean, just turning those things into elk, making food and gaining life, and start with the starting loyalty so high, it just gets there and can really control a game when it comes down. So I'm actually surprised this wasn't the number 1 spot, but I think maybe when Eldraine was coming out and people were updating their cubes, I think a lot of people didn't realize, including myself, how powerful Oko was, and overlooked him. And I know I went back and was like, yeah, this needs to go in. So yeah, Oko is in my cube, and I've played against him in Legacy, and I hate it. But there's no question about how good the card is. Number 2 spots. This one surprised me. Is Bone Crusher Giant. So this one has an adventure where you can pay 1 and a red to deal 2 damage to any target, and damage can't be prevented this turn. And then you can cast his creature for 3 mana. You get a 4/3. Whenever he becomes a target of a spell, he deals 2 damage to that spell's controller. So, yeah, I mean, it's a solid card. I just didn't expect it at number 2, but yeah, so he's a good little beater and has built-in removal. So, great card. Number 1. Now, this actually is my favorite card from Throne of Eldraine, so I'm not surprised other people liked it as well and put it in their cubes. But Murderous Rider is the number 1 pick for Throne of Eldraine in cube, and yeah, just having that built-in destroy target creature or planeswalker is great. Even with losing 2 life, the creature has lifelink, so you're probably going to gain that life back eventually anyways. Obviously, they decided this card would be too good if you could steal it out of your graveyard, since they put that clause on the creature where it gets tucked on the bottom of your library when it dies, which I can kind of understand, because being able to recur a card with that powerful removal, it seems pretty good. So I don't blame them for putting that little clause on there, but the card is still really solid, even without being able to recur it out of a graveyard. So yeah, that is the top 3 cards from every set released in 2019. My data I got from Cube Tutor. It is a great website, although it needs some updating. I really enjoy drafting my cube and keeping track of my cube on cubetutor.com. You can click in the link in the description if you want to try drafting my cube and check out the Cube Tutor website. If you create an account there, you can build and save the decks after you draft, which me and some of my friends have a lot of fun coming up with clever names for our decks and sharing them with each other. So yeah, so feel free to check out Cube Tutor, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I was a little lagging in the end of 2019 for making content, and I have a goal, a New Year's resolution, one might say, to keep more on top of things and keep making YouTube content for Cube, since there is not a whole lot of Cube content on YouTube right now. So hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you when the next set comes out.